Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Antonia Tanguy. This video will give you a guide to the key steps you need to take care of when setting up for your entire digital imaging workflow. So with these 3 short videos, I want to give you a clear overview of what's involved as you set up, import and export your images. And this applies to scanned negatives as well. So we'll go into a lot more detail in the live tutorial, and you can find more information in the written text. Of course, the first thing to consider is the shoot, and you want to try and get as much possible right in camera as possible. So when you're shooting, you want to try to get the focus of the image sharp, for example, the eyes in a portrait, and you need good exposure. Kind of obvious, but sometimes forgotten. Take note of the light in every part of your image. Also, ideally, you don't want anything in the frame that means extra work in post if you need to remove it. A few examples. You can see how this image has no detail in the blacks, and this would mean creating noise when we lighten those areas in post. And it might not matter too much, for example, in a small image, but if you were going to print it big, we'd be seeing the noise. Can you see the red tint in this one, on the whites in particular? It's clearly bouncing off some object in the room, and this is why you will often see photographers and assistants wearing black to prevent unwanted colour tints in the image. This one would be easy to work with, whereas this would have no detail in the highlights. When you lose detail, an image starts to look flat. You can enable the highlight warning in your camera settings if this helps. A key thing we can do to get decent quality is shoot raw. As well as it giving us the maximum amount of data we can get from the camera, it also gives us more flexibility when it comes to post-production. JPEGs, on the other hand, are compressed files, and they're difficult to work with in post, especially when it comes to correcting white balance. Quick example, this palm tree has an orange color cast from tungsten house lights. It's a raw file, and I can easily use the white balance tool to correct it by clicking on an area that should be neutral. With a JPEG, it is more likely that it would still be slightly off. We'll investigate corrections and adjustments in the post-production tutorial. It's an important one to sign up to if you haven't already. Whatever you get from your shoot, always back up your files. A good idea is to add your copyright at the same time as you first view your images. Then copy the files to at least one extra hard drive. We've all seen students stressing out because they've lost work. Save yourself the future stress. Have a think about what steps you can take now to back up your work. And by the way, always eject your hardware safely to avoid corrupting the files. And then take care to protect your hard drive and treat it with care. I'd suggest putting your name and contact details on it somewhere as well. Color management is a term you might not have come across yet, but it's something you can't ignore if you want your colors to be accurate. For example, how would you know which version of this image is the correct color? The only way you can know is by calibrating your screen to an industry standard profile. This was developed by the International Color Consortium, the ICC. You can hire a calibrator from the stores, as you can see here, or you can buy a more affordable version, such as the i1 Display Studio. Not cheap, but invaluable for your image work if you can afford it. There's a great video by the Print Space that you can watch to see the process. It's actually very easy once you've done it once, and you just need to know these settings and follow the steps. You can find it on the help and advice section of the printspace.co.uk under Colour Accuracy, and we'll talk about this more in the live tutorial. And on the subject of colour, it's advisable to work in a neutral environment if possible. As you probably know, our perception of colour is affected by colour. That's why editing suites are always grey and neutral. You're probably aware of Joseph Alber's work on the interaction of colour. 2 squares of colour can appear different, yet when we remove the distracting colours around them, we see they are in fact the same. If I was adjusting the colour on this image, I would definitely prefer to work with a neutral background of the image on the right. So if you're facing jazzy curtains where you work, it might be wise to move your workstation to a plain wall instead, and if possible, daylight temperature light is best. Along with that, the colour of your screen plays a part, and it's wise to work in a medium to light grey workspace, unless of course the destination for the images is a black background too. You can set the colour you want either in Preferences or by right-clicking on your workspace. All of these points can be investigated further in LinkedIn Learning, and the really good news is that as a student of the IOP, you have free access to this amazing resource. I'd recommend using that access as soon as possible. Sign in the first time using your organisation URL, which is falmouth.ac.uk, and then use your student username and password to get in. There's a huge range of tutorials ranging from absolute beginner level to advanced, and in all aspects of photography and many more subjects such as video and animation. We hope you'll find it really useful as a resource alongside your degree. And LinkedIn Learning is where I'd point you to find out more about the software you're using. You can, of course, ask us for help, and I'll go into Adobe Photoshop specifically in the third live tutorial. But for general use of your software, we expect you to learn initially from LinkedIn Learning in your own study time. This enables us to help you develop your work much more quickly. The software you want to be using is either one of these three choices. So at number 1, Adobe Bridge and Adobe Camera Raw, which are included with Photoshop. Or, secondly, Adobe Lightroom Classic combined with Photoshop. So Lightroom Classic is the version which is better for working on your desktop. Or Capture One combined with Photoshop. So the key thing for a consistent workflow is to be organised. Don't just check tiny thumbnails on your desktop. You need either Bridge or the library section of Lightroom Classic to organise, add copyright and rate your images. And this is something we'll look at in the next video. Finally, you'll probably be spending hundreds of hours in front of a computer over the course of your degree. So it's a really good idea to develop good habits from the beginning. One thing you can do is use an app to remind you to take breaks, such as Focus Keeper, for example. This uses the Pomodoro method. And remember to rest your eyes every 20 minutes or so at least, and for at least 20 seconds. 20 seconds gazing at least 20 meters away allows the muscles in the eyes to relax and prevents eye strain. And really importantly, every now and then move your body so you don't end up in the same shape as a chair. So this has been a quick run through of the things you need to consider as you set up for working with your images. Next, we'll look at importing them into your software. Once you've been to the Digital Imaging Fundamentals live tutorial, if you don't understand anything, do get in touch. It usually just takes a few minutes to clarify something for you. Till then, take care and I'll see you soon.